Hello everybody. I just wanted to create a video that looked at some of the final changes that have been made to the tool, which is now marked as version 1.1. Module 1 hasn't changed at all, but there's been some changes to Module 2 and Module 3. The biggest change that has occurred in Module 2, or really the only change, is that we are now across 5 different categories. So this is something that Raju requested in the final training meeting. So you can see that we have some moderate, significant, and catastrophic now, as well as the no impact. So some being up to 20%, moderate being 20 to 40%, significant being 40 to 80, and catastrophic being more than 80%. So this still has to add up to 10 years. So if you were to go across that, you will still get the sum error. The other thing, just looking at some of the way that this is being filled, is just to really think about this percentage of area impacted. So the key thing to consider here is when you look at a particular event, is it the whole production domain that's affected or only a subset? So an easy example is for flooding. That's primarily going to impact the lowlands and not the highlands. So it's not 100% of the area that's likely to be impacted. Whereas something like heat stress is most likely going to impact the whole production area. A late winter or early summer rains, again, might only impact those that don't have irrigation. So you have to think about the context of the climate-induced event in relation to that hazard. Is soil type going to cause differently, and 60% is a particular soil type that won't be impacted? Is irrigation that some have but not others likely to impact? Is it the uplands or lowlands that will be impacted differently? So that's how we want to use this side. So just as a clarification as we move forward. Now, that's particularly important when we think about Module 2.1, where we should be quite specific here on the challenges. So some of the examples that I've seen, particularly around drought. So you would be picking over here insufficient water, and when you do that, some people have just put drought. The tool will work much better if you're specific about what element of drought you're talking about. Is it late onset of rains? Is it intermittent dry spells during season? Is it the lack of rainfall at the end of the season? So what aspect of drought is it? And make sure that that information is in E with some notes. But remember, it's only column E that comes across as the climate-induced event. So same with temperature, high temperatures. Is it above 2 degrees, number of days, or is it consecutive days, or is it high temperature at the end or the start of a season? Being more specific will help the tool work a lot better. So that's the major change that comes in Module 2. There's also been some substantial changes to Module 3. So this is the evaluation page that we're looking at. So some of the changes we've discussed were when you talk about improvement compared to, you've got a drop-down menu that talks about the current yield or the climate impacted yield. So when you're saying that a particular adaptation option up here is related to a hazard combination, you say yes, it will ask, are you comparing to current yield or climate impacted yield, and then ask for a percentage. It will also ask about the additional costs of implementing that system. And you can choose to say that it costs per ton of produce, per hectare, or it's not calculated. The cost of implementation is not calculated by either per ton or per hectare, and then the amount. So note that this can be negative or positive because it may actually be cheaper. And the currency is the currency that you nominate back in Module 1. So in this case, it was the currency nominated was US dollars, but if you put in Indian rupee or a peso or something, then it will ask in that currency and it will auto convert at the end. Down here in implications for farmers, there's also a few additional categories around upfront costs, around the labour requirements, and around new skills to learn. So this is really to think about the actual transition that farmers have to go through. The final questions that have changed are down here around the future context, where we ask how important it is for government support or private sector support, where you can choose low, medium, or high. So that's about would having that support be important to the outscaling? And we've also changed the wording of the private sector into, is there a clear business case? And that goes from already investment, strong business case, unclear business case, and minimal business case. The final thing that you'll find here is these buttons for click for clarification. So if you read a question, does it improve productivity under a changing climate? Click for clarifications. It will take you to that term and it will provide you some text. Down the bottom, you then click to return. So we were just in that first module, click to return. So wherever there's a need to understand a little bit more about the question, you can click to come through and it will take you to the box that's most appropriate to that definition, and then you can click back to the module that you are in. So those are the major changes in module 3, and the results page has also changed as well. So the important things to look at here is around the scoring. So there was a lot of questions around how things are actually calculated. So what we've done here is you can see A through F over here. Now they correspond to A through F over here. So it says for each of the A through F, it will start at 100% for each. It's saying, how important are each of these? So if you want to deprioritize, say, social inclusivity, you could put that down to only a 15% weighting. And if you wanted to deprioritize other things but less, you could put 60%. So all of these don't need to sum to 100%, but they are a number between 0 and 100. And when you look at what does contextual appropriateness means, it means A, it's these 4 factors. Again, B, ready for promotion, it's these 3 factors. So you can assign a number from 0 to 100 for each of these to assign your priorities. However, to create the final number, then you need to assign between the economic importance of a region and the contextual factors, which is above. So all of these are contextual factors, and the economic importance is that that number in billion US dollars. So what you see is what's the potential economic value of the adaptation option and the hazard. Then you've got a relative number where the top one is 100% and everything is ranked according to the top adaptation option by hazard scenario. Then you've got your contextual score, and that's again compared to whatever scores the most, what is the value? And then you've got your combined score, which is again a relative score. So when you change these, so if we were to change from 80% to 20%, we should see some of those numbers change, yes, because it's saying that contextual factors are much more important. So you'll see that these contextual scores are much higher. And these contextual scores are applied to the adaptation option, and we only looked in this junk data that's in there, there were only 2 adaptation options that were looked at, so that's why you're only seeing 2 numbers. So the more options you have, the more difference you'll see in that contextual score. Otherwise, we also have this concerns identified. So in this case, there's many more concerns identified with the adaptation option B that are coming up than with adaptation option A, but you can go down and see the different ones where you have particular issues. It's also summed just for the actual options that come in. So what this is saying is that although option B, again, this is junk data, option B has a higher potential adaptation value, based on all of the weightings that you've put in here, option A, although it's worth less, is scoring better when you combine all of your weightings that are put in. So it's all presented on one slide. to try and make it a little bit easier to see how this is all calculated. The final thing then is just a finish page where we look at some of the limitations of the tool. So it's something that you should read and discuss with your workshop before leaving, because this is not the end point in what we do, and the ability to provide some feedback. So those are the major changes that have occurred in the final development and deployment of the tool. If there are some bugs, what will happen is you'll be notified within the WhatsApp group. And right now we've got this version 1.1. You'll be informed that you need to use version 1.2, and that will be sent out as well. So that's the final changes that have occurred within the tool.